right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies might have inspired it. And today on the show, it's actually a little bit of a different kind of a thing. You know about all my live shows I've been doing lately. Well, this is kind of a live show, but we did it a little bit differently. I was invited to lead a conversation after an early screening of The Long Walk, adapted from the Stephen King novel, written by JT Mollner and directed by Lawerence, with a great young cast. We had a conversation right there in the theater after a packed early screening. It was me and film critic Daniel Howat, who I've had on the show before. It's been a while since he's been on, but happy to have him back on. And so we did the conversation in a slightly different kind of way. It wasn't a straight up piecing it together, but we do get into some influences and we talk a lot about the themes of the film and why it took so long for this movie to get made after 40-something years since the book came out. And so we get into a lot of really interesting stuff. So that's what's coming up here in a second. The Long Walk, out in theaters today at the time that this episode goes up. So before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod. And with that said, let's talk about The Long Walk. All right, so I'm David Rosen, the host of the Piecing It Together podcast, and I would not have made it like 5 miles in that freaking walk, but this is going to be a fun conversation and for a very heavy movie for sure. But Daniel Howat is with me right now. Introduce yourself to everybody here before we get into this thing.
Yeah, hello, Daniel Howat from Next Best Picture. Not exactly a fun movie to chat about, but extremely good. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So you read the book, so I think I want to start there. We're not going to get any spoilers for people who end up listening to this, but didn't get a chance to watch the movie yet. But talk a little bit about the book and how you felt when you heard it was getting adapted, and if this looks anything like what you thought it might look like if they ever made a movie.
Yeah, I'm a huge Stephen King fan, for better or worse, and yeah, love the book. Read it a few years ago, so it's not like hyper fresh in my brain, but it is in many ways very faithful to the book. It's kind of hard to change a ton in the structure, right? Bunch of dudes going for a long walk.
Yeah, it's a very specific thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But in some key ways that are a little bit spoilery, so we won't go into it. But it is actually very different in a few pretty key ways. So for people who have read the book, there are still lots of surprises in the film. This book is something like 45 years old.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get to screen because I think it's a really hard thing to get right because it's such a. There's very few movies exactly like that because it's just walking and just talking for an hour and a half or hour 40. So I don't know exactly what I wanted it to look like, but I think they nailed the tone, the sadness, and the perseverance and just dedication to a fruitless task. I think was really captured very well in the book.
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, at one point George Miller was actually going to make this, and then Frank Darabont, who's obviously had great success with Stephen King adaptations. But then we finally get to now with Lawerence and with JT Mollner as the screenwriter here. Obviously, Lawerence, as somebody who's done this kind of dystopian stuff with Hunger Games and everything like that, I'm Legend, it's a really great pick. JT Mollner is somebody who is just kind of on fire at the moment, and so as soon as we heard that he had a new project coming out and it was an adaptation of Stephen King, it's like, oh, okay, let's see what this is going to turn out to be like. But talk a little bit about those two as the collaborators for finally getting this to the screen.
Yeah, the script here is so vital. It's just talking for this entire time.
Yeah.
I thought the script was so, it was able to boil down the themes really, really well without being too heady or too redundant. It didn't feel like they were just having the same conversations for the entire movie. So yeah, having JT really nailed it. You're right, he's so on fire right now. Francis Lawrence, it is a little interesting that he chose to do this movie in that he's done, the Hunger Games is so very clearly inspired by by Stephen King's novel. So it's a little interesting that he would pick a project so similar to the last 4 movies he's done. But on the other hand, it's such a perfect fit. I mean, he knows this type of story really well, and so I think he was able to bring a lot of, much obviously forward momentum and keep the sadness of it alive and the hope as well.
Yeah. I think to it finally getting made 45 years later, it seems to me anyway, very, very clear why this movie is happening right now. I mean, there's so many parallels to things that are on the minds of so many people right now. But the crazy thing, though, and sad thing, really, is that, this was on the minds of people when the book came out at the same time. And so I think the fact that this probably didn't need to be updated that much. It's still a lot of the same themes, a lot of the same ideas. And the core, though, the thing that kind of brings it together without it being too depressing. We said it's a very heavy topic, but that core, the group, and them becoming friends during this harrowing experience. I guess let's talk a little bit about that and how that is just evergreen, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, when the novel came out, in many ways it was an allegory for the draft, right? Sure. And a lot of military allegory in there. That's very clear. But I think you're right. The themes of the yes, authoritarian regimes on a lot of people's minds right now, but also just the themes of the powerless people. And it's really, unfortunately, evergreen. But it is interesting how well those themes hit on both fronts. But yeah, the cast is really, they hold this whole thing together. There are so many standouts. I mean, Cooper Hoffman and David Jonsson are just incredible, both of them. Talk about careers that are on fire right now. Tell me about some of the ensemble and who are some of your standouts.
Yeah, look, the whole ensemble is really good, but we don't only have enough time here. We got to just focus on those two. They're just so good. And David Johansen, Ryan Lane was just such a great little indie, and then to follow it up with an Alien movie where he's the best part of the movie. So I actually didn't realize he was going to be in this until just a couple of days ago while I was doing some research. Oh, no way, he's going to be in this, and I was really excited. But Cooper Hoffman is someone who, he is so obviously following in his father's footsteps, and he gets that monologue where it's he had to have had his dad on his mind while he's saying those words. But he is really living up to that potential, and I have loved every performance he has given so far. And it's so exciting. We lost Philip Seymour Hoffman way too early, but he is really turning it in. The rest of the cast is really good too. A lot of young faces. Had you recognized any of them for other things? I think the blonde kid with the long hair, I recognized him from some, but the other guys not really so much.
Yeah, you have Ben Wong, who was just the new Karate Kid in.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure. And he's pretty incredible. Obviously, it's not as prominent as Hoffman or Jonsson, but he was incredible. He has one particular scene that might be the most powerful scene in the movie. That was really incredible. I just think the two leads did something incredible here. I was reminded a lot of, in a very strange way. I was reminded of a pairing in Before Sunrise. I don't know if that's a strange thing, but just the two of them having this connection and having the ability to have these conversations and talk about what they're going through, but also bonding over their shared experience. Very weird connection to make there, but that was what I like.
I like that a lot. Also, another cast member, Mark Hamill, playing so against type and really great. And you can see really what drew him to this. He's very outspoken politically, all over Twitter and everything like that. And so I think the chance to play a character like this and just really dig into just awfulness. I think he had a lot of fun here.
For sure, yeah. I mean, he's gotten to dabble in villains, especially in voice work. He's done a lot of villains.
Yeah.
But it was good. He he's not in the movie a lot, but he was used really, really effectively. I think it was phenomenal casting there.
So I want to go back to the book a little bit more and talk just a little bit more about any differences, because, like, again, without like giving things away, but just were there any key themes or anything like that that were explored there and that are here that are like a little bit different? Not so much giving away like deaths or changes or like things like that.
Yeah, it is a little hard to talk about any of the changes that really stuck out to me, because thematically, I do think the themes of the book were kind of perfectly upheld. You know, they hit, like we talked about already, they kind of hit in slightly different ways with, you know, what's going on in our government today versus what was going on in the 70s or 60s, 70s when the book came out. But yeah, the themes, I think, of powerful versus powerless were really, explored very well. But I think in terms of the adaptation, the way that they were able to trim the book down to fit the film, I think was extraordinarily effective. The way they were able to sort of speed up some of the deaths that are in the movie. I think it was really effective without feeling like we lost out. I mean, we start with so many guys here, and they trim it down pretty quickly in the film, but it didn't feel like we lost much. So the book definitely explores pretty much every single death a lot more in detail.
Okay.
So we don't have that here, but I didn't feel like I was missing it for the most part.
Yeah, that's a lot of death to have to experience on screen all at once. On a technical level, I thought there was some really interesting stuff going on here. This film is shot really well. I thought it had a really great score. I think it's different from a lot of what I come to expect from Francis Lawrence. Like, not that his films didn't have really great looks before, but I just thought that this was certainly more striking. It almost reminded me a little bit of what Giovanni Ribisi was doing with JT Mollner's previous film, Strange Darling. It seemed like they really wanted to kind of bring home the beauty of it, which is something that David Johansson's character is talking about a lot in this.
Yeah, the cinematography is beautiful. It's it's beautiful in that it's very stark. I think, though I love the way the camera moved in this. Unlike the boys walking, the camera kind of almost never stopped, but it made those key moments whenever the camera was locked off really, really powerful. It felt like the whole thing just kind of ground to a stop in those key moments that it was used. But I love the color palette as well. Like you said, it's beautiful, but it's also muted in a sense.
Yeah.
And I thought the color palette that was throughout the whole thing, these greens and browns and grays, were used really effectively.
So on my podcast, Piecing It Together, we talk about a film's influences. We call those films puzzle pieces for the movie that we are talking about here. And so you already brought up Before Sunset, which is a very interesting one. I appreciate that. And of course, The Hunger Games, is something, it feels like it clearly was inspired by the original book and then back around in a circle here. I want to get into a few more possible influences here. Who was thinking of Speed with this? I mean, Speed on foot, definitely one. I'll bring up a few more, but do you have some other things that you have thought of?
Yeah, I was thinking of war movies. I think there was so much like military allegory, a lot of connection to dying for your country. So I was thinking of a lot of war movies. There might be better ones that are more applicable, but the one that just kept being in my head was Saving Private Ryan.
Okay.
You know, a group of guys on a mission that often seems like they're gonna fail, you know, and so I really felt that a lot of times throughout the movie.
I'll give you my war movie that I was thinking of is Platoon, which I think was probably, along with the book, kind of back and forth, a lot of influence back there. Obviously, at the same war, they were like, kind of commenting on. And the idea of that camaraderie, that brotherhood in the midst of all of this just awfulness, finding something in all those guys, like finding each other and getting friendship out of it, even in the midst of just all this just hell. On the other end of the spectrum, I was also thinking of Starship Troopers. because of all the just rah-rah, just military, all that kind of stuff. And it's all just pure bullshit. So it's very fun in that again to get to the villain of this and everything like that. So that was one that I was thinking of as well. Any others that you were thinking of?
A couple minor ones with the Major. I kept thinking of that character. I can't remember his name from Cool Hand Luke, the prison guard, right? With the sunglasses, the classic. I felt like they were there was a lot of homage there occasionally in capturing his just kind of glowering at these men throughout the whole walk.
I love that. That's a really fun one there. I'll also go to a couple of TV shows. The Handmaid's Tale, of course, for dystopian stuff. I mean, that goes, with the territory here. But also Squid Game, as far as something that's just like capturing the imagination of an entire nation with these like ridiculous games. And I think I don't know if that's, specifically a Stephen King thing, but for a movie that can be described with one sentence, like everybody has to walk or they die, like that seems like a very Stephen King. And you're a big King fan, right? Would you agree with that?
For sure. I mean, it is interesting. Just this year, we have The Long Walk, and we also have The Running Man coming out in a few months.
Yeah.
And both of those, The Running Man is very similar in a lot of ways, different in many as well. But it's about a TV show that you can sign up to be on, and basically you are hunted. So you sign up for it. If you survive a certain amount of time, I don't remember how much, then you get a big old cash prize. And so you're just hunted for sport on TV. And obviously, The Long Walk and The Running Man were such huge influences for things like Squid Games and The Hunger Games and many other things. And so I don't know if they're exact puzzle pieces. Because the movie, the older movie, The Running Man,
goes in a circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But definitely a lot. I think both of those were hugely influential on so many dystopian stories that we've gotten over the years, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should get into some closing thoughts here as far as any other things that we haven't really talked about here. So, Daniel, I'm going to let you go first, and then I've got a few things in there too.
Yeah, overall, I thought this movie was incredibly profound. It's so much more moving than I expected. I knew that this movie would be dark and sad, but I honestly thought I didn't think it would be quite as emotional as I thought. I don't get too worked up for The Hunger Games, for example. So I kind of thought it would be a lot more in that vein. They're good movies, but not quite as emotional. And this was really, really moving. There are a couple explicit scenes that I was like getting pretty worked up for. I don't know if I quite shed a tear, but I was getting close. And the score is a huge part of that as well. I think the score, there's only a few key moments where it really got to shine. It's fairly just atmospheric for the most part. Yeah. And then a few scenes where it really got to soar, and it was really beautiful. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I think they really nailed the adaptation, and I think people are really going to like it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I don't know the exact budget on this, but this feels like the exact kind of movie we've all been saying we want to see in theaters, and it was great to see it with this crowd here tonight. And this is exactly the movie that we want to see more of in theaters. Something that feels mid-budget, it feels like it's got an original. I mean, it's not based on the book, but a story that we haven't seen a million times before. It's not another sequel. It's not another remake. I mean, obviously it's taken a long time to get this thing made, so they haven't had a chance to remake. But it's that interesting movie that makes you think, but it's also kind of a crowd pleaser. I heard a lot of laughter in the audience at the comedic moments, and a lot of gasps at the horrific moments. It's everything that we kind of want out of a movie. So more of this, I think, is the last closing thought that I wanted to say here. So, Daniel, do you want to plug anything before we go?
You can just follow the site that I write for at Next Best Picture, and I'm everywhere at Howat's DK. That's me.
Right on. And I'll say I've got live shows of Piecing It Together coming up on The Conjuring Last Rites and on A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. Those are both here in Las Vegas, so check at Piecing Pod on all the social medias and you can find out about those. And thank you everybody so much for being here tonight.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about The Long Walk. Thank you so much to Daniel Howat for joining me on that, and thank you to AMC Theaters for having us out. Also, correction, I think I said George Miller at one point. I meant George Romero. Of course, of the Dead's George Romero. That's who was supposed to direct it way back in the day. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to today's conversation. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. If you're new to piecing it together, we have a lot of episodes on the way. I've had a lot of side things going on aside from this podcast. I've taken over my family's record store, Wax Trax Records, here in Las Vegas, and so my schedule has been a little tied up. So I have a lot of episodes that I recorded, and I'm just kind of keeping to make sure that I'm always good for the next couple of months as far as episodes are concerned. So lots in the can, ready to go. So make sure you're subscribed, because all those episodes are going to be coming out as I continue to record more. We got all these live shows on the way. So make sure you are subscribed or following us on social media at Piecing Pod to find out about everything that we are up to. Also, with those live shows, you can enter to win tickets right now. If you check out piecingpod.com, you get all the details on which shows you can currently enter to win tickets for. Also, I have a mailing list, Substack, so you can get subscribed over there as well and find out whenever we have more enter to win contests going on. So time to close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I've got some very heavy, serious music that I could play to close out an episode like this movie with the themes of the long walk and all that. But speaking of things that have been keeping me busy lately, I have a comedy rock group with my pets called the Pup Pups, and the lead singer of the Pup Pups, Harvey, passed away a few weeks back, and we're still dealing with that and the grief of that. It's just been a really difficult time, but there's some really great songs about Harvey throughout the albums from the Pup Pups, and one of them is a duet between me and Harvey singing, all about going on a walk. So we're going to turn the theme of this movie upside down and go with the song Walka Walka from the very first Pup Pups album, Who Wants Din Din. This is all about the joys of going on a walk. Not the kind of walk in the long walk, but, the good kind of walk. So this is Walka Walka. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more piecing it together real soon.
We're going on a Walka Walka. We're going on a walk. Well, you know that I have been a really good dog. So I think that you should get to go for a walk. I'm gonna poop on a leash, and yes, you know my dad will pick it up. We're gonna walk in the park, 'cause you're a really good dog. I'm gonna make some friends and sniff their butts. We're going on a Walka Walka. We're going on a walk. We're going on a Walka Walka. We're going on a walk. Well, my pup likes to go for
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.